if I have to come in at an emergency care department or whatever other partner, and I need to do like how many sessions on how to use the AI, and like this is how it works and this is how you should handle it, then I think you designed a wrong AI. It should feel natural to the people.
What if the biggest risk to your AI strategy isn't technology, but the people, politics, and processes around it? I'm Dirk Jan Upkes, host of Women Disrupting Tech, the podcast about women shaping how technology is really built. In this episode, I talked to Sophia Zitman. Sophia Zitman is an AI leader who has helped banks, airlines, and hospitals work with AI, and we talk about why so many AI projects fail, how to design AI people actually work with, and how to deal with fear and resistance. If you're a founder working with AI or an investor, this episode will help you avoid building or backing AI tools that look impressive in the slide deck but never get used in reality. So when you're ready to listen and learn, here's my conversation with Sophia Zitman. Sophia Zitman, welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we met at the Next Web
Yeah.
after your keynote, why your AI strategy is failing and how to fix it. And one of the things I remember from that discussion is that you told me that you get asked on stage not because you're a woman, but you're just very good at what you do. So I was wondering if you could share a bit of the backstory, how you got onto the stage at the Next Web and what you do at Kickstart AI.
Yeah, of course. And maybe to get into the first part, I mean, I of course hope and sincerely wish that that's the reason, and I think that can definitely be the reason. That's why I was having a keynote on the Next Web. But I think, and that also ties in with the things we're probably gonna discuss later on. Maybe that is not always the case, and that's really a
Yeah.
double-edged sword. But we'll dive into that one later, I guess.
Yeah.
Indeed, Sophia Zitman, director of AI projects at Kickstart AI. And we, as Kickstart AI, are a non-profit founded by corporates in the Netherlands. KLM, AltoHas, NS, and ING are behind it,
Mhm.
with the mission to accelerate the adoption of AI. And we've done that, tried doing that, and still doing that in a variety of ways. And one of those ways is really AI implementation and adoption projects from A to Z. So from like the idea of maybe something can become more efficient to having it fully operational in those partner companies or other organizations that we work with. And that is where I come in as well. I'm responsible for the success, the business success, or the societal success of all these projects, which I think is really fun. And I joined Kickstart AI 2 years ago, I think by now. And before that, I've always been in consultancy on the AI
Mhm.
side of things. Used to be a AI engineer myself. So I've written my fair share of code too, but also did a whole lot of projects and account management in that setting. And I think that make me very well suited to set up this part of Kickstart AI as well.
Cool. Couple of questions. Do you think it's prerequisite that you can actually do a bit of coding or at least understand how AI works in order to be able to do consultancy and to lead projects on AI?
I think it's a very big asset if you know how to. I think there might be a couple people out there who don't and still do an amazing job, but I really see myself and also the work with my colleagues that we're doing. We're kind of bridging the tech and the human world and making it productive together. And if you want to be this bridge or this translator, as some people call it, you need to be able to speak both languages.
Yeah.
And therefore, I do think you need to know a bit about the inner workings of AI, but also, of course, about the organizations and the people that are going to use it. So, yeah, I'd say so.
Okay. And the other question that was in my mind is you mentioned that you build, of course, for organizational value, probably for customer value, but also a bit for societal value.
Yeah.
how do you define that? How do you define if it's value for society?
Yeah, that's a good one because in a sense it's a bit of a vague one. There's not one metric that immediately comes to mind. When of course you look at business value, you can one way or another always translate it to money.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to society, sometimes you can. I think in maybe what you put back into the economy or savings you generate for an organization with a really big societal cause, like another nonprofit, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes we also look at different ways. And an example there is we once did a project with Ampere, which is the logistics side of Bol.
Mm-hmm.
And there our business case was actually in CO2 reduction, so emission reductions, which I think has a very big societal benefit if one does. And
Yeah.
I did like that a whole lot because then you can make it really tangible. You can calculate. You can really see, hey, did we achieve what we wanted to achieve or not? And really, yeah, in that way, look at what you want to achieve.
Yeah. So I read a piece this morning about AI sort of having impact on society at large,
Hmm.
and not necessarily good, positive, and the need for regulation. I was wondering how you look at that topic. Also,
Hmm.
because you're building AI,
Yeah,
also with us in part sometimes a societal, at least a societal impact,
yeah.
especially if you work for NS and ING, it will
Hmm.
benefit sort of impact society at some point.
Hmm. Well, I think in general, I always approach this from a bit of a different angle because sometimes I feel in media or in the conversations people having, it's kind of saying either you have the people who like do AI and then you have the people who want to regulate it, and they're kind of opposites of one each other. At least they're facing each other.
Uh-huh.
I don't see it like that because I mean I'm of course the one also like building the AI. That's what we do at Kickstart. We want to have it like implemented and do beautiful things. And
Hmm.
I think I do want the same as the people who want to regulate. I do want the same as regulators. I want it to have a net positive for all of us. Why otherwise do it?
Hmm.
So I don't think in what we want to achieve, we're different whatsoever. Only the angle of which we sometimes approach it is different. And there sometimes you can get a bit of friction or potential misalignment. But in general, I think um, regulations, like they're good. I mean, I self-regulate when I do projects, right? Because I just don't want to do something for whatever. I I have my
Yeah.
own ethics and desires and like will for it to become a positive thing. Um, so that's kind of my take on it. But what I do think is important when you look at regulations is that you should not limit the people who are actually doing it and like have those sandbox environments. I would like to see regulations actually stimulate the use of AI, but in a safe and sound environment, and not say not do AI. And that is, I think, where one should have the discussion, if that makes sense.
Yeah, let's double click on that. So, how do you make it safe without putting limitations on it?
Well, I think sometimes you can have like limitations, of course. Like I said, um, I do self regulation as well. But what I would like to see, and what I see a lot in like companies, sometimes they don't even start with AI or keep the scope very small because they're afraid of either like big fines or having headlines in newspapers and saying they're doing something wrong. And
Hmm.
there's this huge fear, which is blocking people and organizations from actually using it. And
Hmm.
what I would love to see for regulations is saying, like, hey, we of course want to do it properly. So if you have this regulatory body, say, hey, this is the aims that we have, and I can, I'm very sure that like 99.999% of all organizations align with those values behind it. And
Hmm.
that we then together with this regulatory body can say, okay, let's find a way on how we then can actually do it in this safe and sound way. Like a sandbox or like a collaboration. And then let's find out a way on how to do it and not just say, hey, if you fuck up, we're gonna slash you, but say,
Hmm.
hey, we both want to get the benefits out of it. We both have the same values backing it. Let's find a way to do it. And I think
Yeah.
that's a completely different way of approaching it and a very different mindset. And then all of a sudden, it's not a limitation, but it becomes an enabler.
Yeah. Yeah, true, and I agree that that collaboration usually works better. I also say that coming from a more regulatory background, in the sense that I used to do risk and compliance. So, but I still think, to your point, indeed, collaboration works best. On the other hand, I do feel that you need you always need both a carrot and a stick, because if you mess up because you were just not intending to do well, or because you just had a very bad design and still
Mhm.
implemented it knowingly, then I think there's yeah, you need to have uh, some punishment of
Yeah,
sorts.
of course, but that's of course a thing when you did do it knowingly. So in a way, you then say, "Hey, I don't align with these values of creating something with a net positive,"
Yeah.
and then yeah.
Okay. Let's switch a bit. Well, keep
Mhm.
it a bit into the AI domain, of course. So your keynote at the Next Web was about why AI strategies are failing.
Yeah.
Why do they fail?
Well, I mentioned a whole bunch of reasons in that keynote, but I think the
Mm.
common denominator in all those reasons are actually humans, um,
Okay.
oddly enough. And I think what I mean by that is when I implement and develop AI in like the projects that we do, the technique or the AI, like developing the AI itself, is never really the problem. Of course, it's a puzzle and you need a whole bunch of clever minds and you need to do it like carefully and thoroughly, um, and all that. But if you look at the time spent and maybe if you start counting the amount of size on like, oh no, it's difficult, then I think for the development, it's actually rather limited. But when you look at then actually putting it into an interface that works for the people who need to start working with the AI or can start benefiting from the AI,
Mhm.
that's that's already way more difficult. But even before that, at the start of a project, really finding a project that can deliver a whole lot of value is sometimes really difficult because it's so often approached from this innovative tech push kind of angle that people kind of forget the organizational context that they live in. um, for example, when we start up a project, more often than not, I get a call and they'd be like, "Oh, Sophia, like Gen AI or agentic AI, which is kind of taking over the hype now. We
Yeah.
need it. It's great." And then I always say, "Yeah, indeed, it's great. It can do great things." But before, I don't want to go into an organization and just start looking for a random place to put in some agentic AI. I want to start at their company at like their long-term goals and their vision and the targets that they have and the struggles that they now have to meet those targets and get in the direction of that vision. Because that's where the real business problem is. And that's then also where I say you can deliver most value. And
Yeah.
then you can say, okay, what then does the tech needs to look like to actually solve that problem? And I think you see all sorts of things across all or a lot of organizations, um, which just kind of makes us a bit inefficient sometimes.
Because they don't start with organizational goals in mind, or because they just want to have agentic AI for the purposes of having agentic AI and the director being able over drinks to say, hey, but we have an AI agent.
Yeah, no, exactly, right? Because that's kind of the thing. Because and they're like, oh yeah, I know it's cool, innovative. I can talk about it during like the Friday afternoon drinks or like
Yeah.
the Christmas holiday party with the family. And I'm not saying I never do those things. I do those things too. It's cool to talk about it. But when you say, hey, we really want to deliver value,
Mhm.
just say there is a more efficient place to start looking.
Yeah. So, how do you solve for this? What is the, let's say, how do you turn this around? Because you get
Mhm.
these calls and then you tell them basically, okay, well, if you, let's look at your goals, let's look at, probably also look at the tech stack
Yeah.
that you have and the people you have. How do you transform that into something that is going has a good chance of being successful?
Yeah, it's a bit of a multi-stage process, and I think
Mhm,
you mentioned a lot already there. I always start indeed on the organizational side, and I try to go through all layers. So indeed, on the most like abstract layer, what's the vision for the organization
mhm,
that we're doing this project with? Because you want to build something that is also durable within the organization. You don't want to solve a problem that they don't expect to have anymore in like 3 years or whatever. So that's where you go, and then you go a bit like lower down in the pyramid and say, okay, what are your targets for like upper middle management?
mhm,
Because and that always gives a really good insight in like the metrics and how you eventually gonna evaluate your project. Because that's there the company basically already tells you, hey, this is what we find important and this is what fits in our um, system and our way of working. And then I go way deeper. Then I start mapping processes that then affect these targets or the targets we potentially want to help them with.
mhm,
And that is really where it becomes also really operational. Is there's always a process, people having tasks, team doing things, delivering things. And then within that process, you can start looking for, okay, then where is the bottleneck? um, or where is the blocker, or how can we enable people to do things better, more joyful, you name it. So then you have a really clear view of the organization from like all different layers, and you can really check yourself, hey, am I working with the right problem? And especially that process layer where you actually map the tasks of people. uh, if you know that and you know where you want to increase some sort of efficiency or whatever, then you already have a whole lot of requirements on what the solution needs to look like because you know who it needs to work for.
mhm,
And then you can really start designing, okay, what does in an ideal world does the solution look like? And if you have that dot on the horizon, it's a matter of mapping what you need to do to get there and start building. So that's what we do, and it takes quite some time. It usually takes a couple months before you have this entire clear picture with like interviews or
mhm,
shadow runs or like shifts that people do. For example, a project where I've been involved myself a whole lot was for the Erasmus MC, the hospital in Rotterdam.
mhm,
We did a project for the emergency care, and I did a couple shifts in like full on nurse suit myself to really understand what the tasks of the people at the emergency care look like, to really check that we're designing something that works for them. And that is what my colleagues also do throughout the project, to really get a feel of, yeah, who you're doing it for.
yeah. Out of curiosity, how do you make it future proof? Because if you're measuring the situation as it is right now, you can project a bit, let's say, modernize it a bit. Probably there's quite a bit of inefficiency to be
Mhm.
resolved. But how do you make it? How do you make that technology stick in the minds of people so they actually keep using it? Because otherwise, there's the next thing,
Mhm.
or the let's say tech not so positive person who is like, yeah, but we can also do make it work without.
Yeah.
How do you avoid that? How do you make it successful also long term?
Um, yeah, I think that is really part of, I think if you do that process mapping and all those shadow runs successfully, you should come up with a design that works. Because in the end, you want to make something that benefits
Hmm.
people. And sometimes that can be a customer or a patient when you look at, for example, the Erasmus project, but also the people like the nurses and the doctors working on the
Hmm.
emergency care. It should work for them as well. It should work everywhere, it should be a benefit everywhere. And if you do one's work properly, there is this benefit. So people have this natural incentive to use it. And that is, I think, also really comes in with, I think, a general philosophy we have about tech. Like tech should work for people and not the other way around. Like the tech should bend around people. If I have to come in at an emergency care department or whatever other partner, and I need to do like how many sessions on how to use the AI, and like this is how it works and this is how you should handle it, then I think you designed a wrong AI. it should feel natural to the people. Like it should aid the people and not the other way around. And if you do that, it feels natural to people. There is a benefit for people. So why wouldn't you use it, so to say? And I think within that philosophy, you can also add that it actually being useful is the best example on why this can definitely be a positive change for society and all of us.
Absolutely. So, just stepping back a bit in the interview,
Mhm.
you spoke about tech leaders who sort of rush into tech before reflecting on the real business challenge that they have to solve.
Yeah.
Um, is that a particular AI problem, or do you see that in a broader context?
Well, I
That people rush
definitely
to tech rather than as a sort of I've heard that it works, so it must work for me.
well, I definitely see it a whole lot in AI, and I can assume it works in other fields as well. I don't think I can comment on that a whole lot because my work is within AI.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think it's a mindset within, especially like the larger corporates I also work for. So I wouldn't be surprised if you have had other people on the podcast, or will get other people on the podcast that work in a different like side of tech and really see this happening too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was more broadly that I spoke to Anouk Friedman a couple of weeks back, and she said,
Hmm.
well, in order to have an inclusive organization, you need to be able to understand yourself, to connect with yourself as a person first, because otherwise you don't know what inclusion could look like, and
Hmm.
B, you rush into building an inclusive organization for the purposes of just checking off some DEI checklist
Hmm.
instead of that you do it because it makes real business sense.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a very similar, or if not the same, uh, principle at play. You know, you can want to go on like, or like have efforts on being more diverse because indeed you want to have that checklist.
Hmm.
I think that's very similar in saying, oh yeah, I read about agentic AI, so now I need to do something with my innovation department as well, so I can also have a check in the box there. But then, of course, you're very likely not to have the beneficial outcomes that it actually can have if you would have done it properly to begin with. Yeah.
Yeah. So um, I think it was a quote of yours that you believe that people, not algorithms, can make or break AI initiatives. Um, can you share an example where this happened, or where yeah, essentially where people made or broke the initiative?
Yeah, I'll stay a bit vague and descriptive. Maybe let's start with the breaking one that's a bit more juicy, and then we can go into the endless of like positive examples we of course have as well.
Yeah.
Um, we once did a project also for one of our partner companies, and um, we landed on this topic, which was very core and things they did within the business, and they already had some efforts going on this particular topic.
Hmm.
Um, so that was great, and we tagged along on on a different side, and we brought a lot of speed, a lot of attention. We brought a whole lot of people together because we really had this focus on actually getting it implemented and not
Hmm.
just staying within this experimental researchy phase, which of course is really important. You of course also need to do, but we really wanted to be more iterative. So bring what we already got to production, and then later grow on that.
Hmm.
Um, but then at some point, I think we went a bit a bit too fast because people really sold this as a really difficult topic, and then we showed a whole lot of progress real quick, and that did not necessarily in line with the political incentives of other people. And then you see them kind of like, then you start seeing a bit of pushback and all that kind of stuff. And then at some point, such a project becomes a bit of a pawn in a bigger political play. Um, And I think the irony here is that because the tech was so great and we got to that point so fast, that there was a real irony there that it still then got slowed down by quite a lot, because it got this like um, yeah, political nature to
Yeah,
the
feel
to
over it.
yeah.
Yeah. So was that a classic case of what we call in Dutch aan zijn eigen succes ten onder gaan? So basically being going bankrupt based on its own success.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I think so. And I mean, there's still a bit of life to it. You know, it's no wasted what has been done, the work that has been done. But sometimes, sometimes you can also move a bit too quick, I guess.
Yeah.
But
So how did that make you feel that it sort of was so successful that it sort of torpedoed itself?
Well, that sucked. I did
Yeah.
feel bad
Yeah.
about it. No, yeah, no, I mean, also with the team and also with like a lot of people from that company, we spent a fair number of like hours on it. We really liked it. We did a whole lot for it. Uh, yeah, no, it was people definitely had a passion for that project, and that showed also in the success, of course. So when it then gets torpedoed like that, that sucks. So that was kind of my first wave, and the second wave was also kind of like, should I have managed things better? Should I have played way more of a political game? You know,
Mhm.
you get a bit of at least that's what I always get, and I start kind of like doubting myself and being like, what if I engineered the world completely different? What if I made sure there was another beer at the Friday afternoon drinks, and like sent that email like a day out earlier or later, whatever I said,
Yeah.
could that have changed? And I think not, but yeah, no, it sucks, and then you move on, and then you start looking for other ways, and sometimes we pause it for a little bit and focus our times and energy on other beautiful things, and come back to it when the time is there.
Did you do that in this particular case?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
did that help to
yeah.
take your foot off the gas and then later come back to it when minds were more, let's say, sometimes I hear what you say, that it's sometimes also dependent on the, let's say, the political agenda of people.
Yeah. No, yeah, for sure. And I think my default state is always keeping my foot on the gas. That's kind of how we break barriers, how we move mountains. It's
Uh,
really how we also at Kickstart identify ourselves as the doers. But every once in a while, you need to take your foot off the gas, let it kind of drive, just let it go on for a bit. And then for whatever reason, it will always find momentum because it was so good to begin with. And then you can just pick it up.
yeah. Do you have a certain way of dealing with these political forces, or let's say situations where you're doubting yourself? Should I send this email a little bit earlier or later, or maybe had another beer on the Friday drinks? How do you deal with that as a person? Does this stay in your mind long, or is it a thought that comes up that you then sort of push that you're able to push out?
Um, I think there are two kind of like separate questions in here. I think because how I deal with it more from like an organizational work perspective. Of course, you deal with it because when you want to implement AI from
Uh-huh.
like A to Z and do it, like I said in the beginning, the organizational context and where you want to go and aligning people and incentives and bringing departments together, it's a political game you
Uh-huh.
play, and I mean that in a good sense of the word. It's a political game. Like there's no negative connotation for me there. So of course, it's a big part of our project when we do those mappings, especially in the beginning, and like looking at targets of people and departments to have that all mapped out to make sure that we're actually building something that the organization wants, that people want, that fit into their own political agendas within the company. So from the get go, you start navigating that, you start mitigating that because you need you need a whole different bunch and different people throughout such an organization. So that is a key success factor
Hmm.
uh, in what we do. And I also think we do that well if you look at the results we have with our projects and how fast we can get things live or get very sensitive topics moving to begin with. Doesn't mean it like always works. Like this occasional example that I gave you, sometimes you know it doesn't, and that's part of it. But I think that's part of everybody's work, and I'm very proud of kind of the success rate that we have
Yeah.
in the projects that we do. So that is the work answer of the things, and then on a more personal level, um, yeah, that thought pops up, um, and I can feel that for like half a day, and then it kind of like I get a little bit of like frustration, a little bit of sadness. But for me personally, that really turns to fuel quite quickly, because in a bit of odd way, it's a challenge to then mitigate or navigate that, and
Hmm.
then kind of try to see like the puzzle in it, and then my mind starts spinning on like how to best go about it.
Okay, so you move to more the solutionizing mode pretty quickly.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Okay, so that's an example where initially, at least, the AI initiative was sort of broken up in order to,
Yeah.
well, you at least that you to take your foot off the gas. Can you share an example where the initiative was wildly successful, but then in a positive way?
Yeah, yeah, of course. Um, I can even share a couple if I may.
Sure.
I think the one I already mentioned before, Ampere. I think what was a big success there is that we really went from like kind of the inception of an idea to having something fully operational in their business processes in about half a year. So that's like rapid speed. Like from the moment I picked up that phone, from more like the innovation people being like, "Oh, let's do something cool," to actually having something running. If you see, for example, if you see a bull busje, like a van,
Mhm.
picking up parcels, whatever, shipping them, um, most likely the estimates for the volume of those parcels and the planning process, we did that together with them. So that has been a collaboration with Kickstart, which I think is very cool. When you look, for example, at the Erasmus, the hospital project, we
Mhm.
did it there in 9 months. So that's also incredibly fast. And not
And
just like
what was that project about again? Was that about planning the need for emergency care?
yes, something like that. It was indeed like they came to us with the problem or the use case, saying we still go on like code red, as they call it, too much. So basically they have this coloring system saying if they're
Mhm.
green, they still have plenty of capacity that they can take in people and whatever kind of emergencies. But when they go on code red, as they say, they basically say, hey, we're at full capacity. We actually cannot take in people anymore. Like we'll still do if shit hits the fan, but it's anything far from ideal.
Mhm.
And this has been a huge, also been part of the public debate in times of COVID,
Mhm.
where a lot of people had to go through the emergency care. And they basically said, well, it's kind of moved out of the public eye, but to us, it's still very much a problem because we're still on very similar frequencies of going on red. Can you find a way for us to like make this a little bit better and potentially solve it? And then that of course was a really beautiful, lovely case, and also from a very societal uh, point of view,
Yeah.
I think by nature. And then we started looking into them like, okay, how can we actually change some of the processes that you go on red less often? And one of the things we saw is that a lot of the work they do on how they like assign people or the frequency, like the speed in which they take in people or they send people home or to different departments of the hospital, is very reactive on what is happening at that moment. And we can ease that like flow way more if we can help them be more proactive in making those choices.
Hmm.
But to be proactive, you need to have a bit of a look into the future on how much people will actually be coming in.
Hmm.
And that is then what we made together with them. And this little window into the future and with predictions on how many people would be coming in, which then allowed them to be more proactive in the things they already did.
Yeah, so actually, sort of create space proactively on the ICU,
Yeah,
or sorry, on the emergency
emergency
room,
care. Yeah.
not on the ICU. Uh,
But that, for example, was a thing. And like from that initial thought on just like, hey, we still have this problem, but not knowing where to exactly change and aid or like help people out, to actually having this little window into the future that the nurses and doctors can use to start acting more proactively. That was a 9 month project, and like having both the AI that can give this little look into the future, but also having the entire technical infrastructure behind it. Like this thing is running 24/7, like
mhm,
every hour, it's looking once again into the future and updating itself. But then, of course, also finding a way that this information can be very easily and naturally kind of fed to the nurses and doctors at the emergency care, that is intuitive, that in just a glance they can take in and digest that information and do something with it. It had so many angles, and that also then in this ever changing complex organization that a hospital is, I think to make this work also from a technical point of view, we had to collaborate across 8 different teams.
mhm.
Um, and that is quite a thing. It's a challenge we took on together, and that worked. And that's also really because of the people, because people do want it. They do want to find a way. They were basically like, hey, we all have our own set of expertise or our own knowledge, but we're still kind of finding a way within the hospital ourselves to bring this together in the most efficient way. And really, let's use this case, this collaborative project, also as this sandbox or first experiment on
Mhm.
saying let's pick something and see how that works. And then, of course, and that's also what they're doing now, reflecting on that entire process of that project and saying, hey, what did work really well for us? And we see that they're already copying some of that in their own way of working or in their own tech stack. And with other things, they say, hey, we learned from this and now we're going to change it a bit when we're going to do a similar thing ourselves. And that is purely mindset of people. And I think that's beautiful.
Yeah, that absolutely is. I was wondering about one thing. What I have not heard you say outright is that people were resisting the tech. So there were the obstacles that you had on the way were more around, let's say, the politics, the organizational politics, and how to get it implemented from a let's say a tech perspective.
Hmm.
Have you ever ran into cases where a project ran into headwinds because it was AI itself? So the resistance against AI as a technology?
Well, it's, I think, almost every project I get there's somebody who mentions it, for sure. I think we can navigate that pretty well though, because usually people bring it up from some sort of like fear of the unknown, or like
Hmm.
they have this public debate and they're a bit like, ooh. But those people, if you then start explaining what it is and that we're there with the same um, moral values, the same goals as them, as making also their life more um, pleasant. And for some people, indeed, work can change a bit, like some tasks, and the AI can aid or help them with, or maybe completely do. But of course, that gives them room to do then other things within those companies.
Hmm.
Um, or when we say, hey, uh, I think what's also always a thing, people kind of automatically assume that it is the end of the world if an AI makes a single mistake. And in some cases, that's, you can definitely make that argument. But in a whole lot, I also don't think it is, because humans make plenty mistakes too. And in the end, you want to have this increase in efficiency, productivity, quality, you name it. And so as long as you generate that improvement without any substantial loss or cost on whatever somewhere else, then you're still creating that benefit. And having people understand that, and just basically taking the time to listen and talk them through, and have those people involved in designing the solution, or at least requirements for the solution,
Mhm.
takes that out of the way.
So what I'm hearing you say is especially also involve them.
Yeah.
So don't take them out, but take them in rather into your project and make them sort of productive if they're
Yeah.
giving you headwinds because they may actually have, let's say, legitimate concerns.
Yeah, for sure. Like almost always like a legitimate thing, like a concern, a question, uh, whatever. And I think a whole lot, sometimes many things sound like a concern or some sort of anti sentiment at first, but are just a question.
Hmm.
And that, of course, you can answer. And in all honesty, it's usually those people, because it's the people who have a heart for the company they work for, or they really enjoy their job. And it's also usually the people who understand the organization quite
Hmm.
a lot. Otherwise, they wouldn't bring it up. So those people are, I'd say, immensely valuable for really getting that proper understanding and make something that works. Because if you can make something that works for those people, it will work for almost everybody. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah,
that
definitely include them. Yeah,
yeah, that's absolutely true. If you can make that work for them, it usually it takes away a lot of the resistance that you would otherwise have had. I think
yeah.
because usually those the people voicing resistance are or voicing concerns are the people who are let's say vocal about it, but there's usually, in my experience at least, with implementing new tech, is that there are a lot more people who have the same concerns but are not vocal about it.
Hmm.
So it reduces your chance of silently killing your project.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And what I sometimes, I think, in quite a lot of the projects actually see is that those people,
Hmm.
they becomes they're very likely to become some sort of early adopter, or a champion of the project as well.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's just great to see.
Yeah, that is true as well. Indeed, it's sort of they move from as I used to call it, backbenchers to the front women or the front people,
Yeah.
and then being your ambassadors by telling their own crowd that
Hmm.
this is just really great stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So many of the listeners who are listening to this podcast are either female founders or they're investors, and
Hmm.
I want to see if we can get free sort of learnings out of this for cases where they use or start to use AI in their companies. I think one is to at least is to listen to concerns of other people and to take them into the to the project.
Hmm.
What other things do you see wrong? Let's say from a technical perspective, and these could
Yeah.
be fixable, but
Um, yeah, there can be plenty of things. I think when I reflect on the projects that we do with Kickstart, I think it's often underestimated how much time and effort you actually need to get into the infrastructure side of things. So not just building the model, because that's what most people, talk about. It's kind of the most sexy topic of it all.
Mhm.
But having just like the computer databases, all the programs talking to one another, doing that in a resilient way, like from a technical perspective, resilient way, having these like life cycles, the monitoring, you name it, that comes into play. Definitely don't underestimate that. So that is, I think, from a technical point of view, what I say taken into account. But at the same time, I would like to note is also don't let yourself be limited by it. I think definitely for more startups or scale ups or new initiatives, I would love it. And I think it's definitely possible if AI can become this great equalizer, because, it can start to code for you as well. It can do a whole lot of these things for you too.
Uh-huh.
Uh, um, so don't be limited by it. Absolutely not. Like use it to your advantage, because there's so much more you can now do yourself, especially in those early phases.
Yeah.
So
Do,
just do it. Yeah.
yeah. Do you think that new organizations or smaller organizations have a benefit compared to bigger organizations when it comes to implementing AI? Because they're
Yeah,
just more, let's say, agile, much more. They,
absolutely. A lot less legacy when it
yeah,
comes to tech.
yeah,
No, yeah, for sure. I think it definitely from a mindset perspective as well, because usually you see people that are a bit more, that are more agile themselves or more innovative themselves in certain ways, or a bit more like fast moving.
mhm,
Uh, and I think definitely with the tools that AI can offer you today, is becoming so much of an advantage for one. You don't need like necessarily like a bunch of like an entire department or whatever of developers to get the smallest idea of the ground. You can play with it yourself so easily, right? And of course, when things start to get really big and whatever, at some point it's good to get some expert matters, like some experts involved in making sure everything is sound, also all the edge cases and so on. But that's so much in a later stage.
Okay, is there a sweet spot when you start doing this, or let's say red flags when you have to start thinking like, hey, we need to get people on board?
Um, yeah, there might be. I don't know if I'm necessarily the one to pinpoint that exactly. Um, I think, yeah, as in, if you just want to test an idea, if you want to like play, like have a toy, have a shiny object,
Huh?
and then there's so much you can like do yourself. And usually in a startup, one is never truly alone. You have at least a small cloud of people surround you. When you start to become more up in a skill phase, that obviously gets a whole lot more.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think maybe what's even more important is that the people you bring on board still share that mindset of moving fast. Um, and I think also when I also look at developers and also with the team we have now at Kickstart, and if we bring on new people, um, of course we test them on the technical skills and how technically sound that their work is. But next to that, it's also very much the mindset that they have. Do they have this like, oh, can build, can do, can find a way mentality, instead of the developers who just get a ticket and do it just as the ticket describes and don't consider the broader context, or don't consider like the broader scope or targets of the project,
Uh-huh.
and kind of think ahead. Um, so if anything, there is, bring on people whenever you feel you need to bring on people, but the people you bring on, make sure you have that bit of an entrepreneurial techie as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very good suggestion. How do you do that for yourself? What do you look for? Well,
Yeah,
what kind of the words maybe even or um things that pop into your mind like, okay, this is when I am getting enthusiastic about a person sitting across of me.
oh, that's a good one. Um, well, we just hired a bunch of people, and we're still in the process of hiring people. So, like in that sense, it is really relevant.
Huh?
And like I said, of course, there is a certain technical baseline one
Uh-huh.
needs to meet. But I do very much like it if, besides, they of course they like the tech part of it. They enjoy those technical puzzles, and they want to play with it. They enjoy that part of their work. But I think when I look at the common denominator of people within the team, they all have, in one way or another, this drive to do something that actually makes it to production, that makes it into real life. And some of the people in the team really come from this societal or environmental angle where they say, hey, I spent, I don't know, a couple of years in my career just kind of being part of a really big organization in a silo and kind of just being a really small part of the process. And I want to be part of like way more of that process. I want to be way more in touch with the thing I actually build and see it come to life. And that is something that, of course, that we do. So yeah, that is, I think that that spirit, that kind of need for that very kind of having a purpose or seeing what you do really materialize in front of your eyes. People who enjoy that, who kind of need that in their job. I love it. I have that myself as well, and I think it works great within our team.
Okay. So, out of curiosity, how do you keep up to date? Because I know you like the lunch table as a source of information, but
Yeah.
um, how do you keep up to date otherwise? Are there specific blogs or YouTube channels or
Um,
whatever you follow?
I don't necessarily follow a whole lot of these myself because, like I said, like at their actual lunch table at the office, like a lot of people from the team, they do it, and we discuss that a whole lot. So I think indirectly, I get a lot. I get a lot of that insight already. But I think the best way to stay up to date is actually use or play with it as much as you can yourself. And I think the easiest way for plenty of people is, this all the LLMs that are out there, like the ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, whatever.
Huh?
Uh, I always make sure to toy with it. And the funny thing is, I actually start developing preference for certain kind of models for certain tasks
Uh-huh.
uh, oneself. And when you have that really hand-on experience with something and you allow yourself to reflect on it and think on it for a little bit, having all those other conversations on like the actual benefits of AI or what it can do, what it's not yet can do, or where the dangers actually lie, that becomes so much more tangible, that becomes so much more concrete. And then you kind of move out of this hypothetical space. And that I think still dominates a lot of the conversations around AI in the public domain. But when you actually work hands on with it yourself, and even if you're a little bit ballsy, I don't know, develop a bit of an AI agent yourself. Go to one of these models, spend a day in a weekend building one. Then
Does it
that
go
can,
that quick?
if it's a simple one, yeah.
Okay, because that's something really cool that people can actually do and also get started with AI to get over the let's say out of the fear zone and into the possibility zone.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. And also, like, if it doesn't work within a day, also don't beat yourself up over it. And I think a lot of people already kind of use it sometimes to summarize documents or to write an email, and I think that's great. But actually building something with it yourself, or if you have another task that is way more related to the physical world. I sometimes use it for cooking, for example, which I think is kind of funny. Then, like in the midst of it, I'm kind of saying like, "Oh, what would have actually happened if I did like X, Y, Z, kind of like experimental, um, like random things." So yeah, those kind of things were or for hobbies. I've a big passion for lipsticks on a very random side note, but it's very fun. It's very fun to talk with AI about those things.
Yeah,
So in whatever way, like just have fun with it, play with it, use it, and if you feel comfortable, maybe I don't know, build something with it.
yeah, I think that's very good. At least experiment with it, get to know the tool
Yeah,
and understand what you're talking about.
yeah, for sure. And of course, AI is way bigger than those LLMs, but for example, I don't know if people, I don't know if you drive or use public transport, it doesn't even matter. But if you say, "Hey, I want to know more about how those best routes are calculated when I open Google Maps.
Mhm.
Can you tell me how that's done?" They can tell you. And then if you say, "Oh, if I were to make such a program myself, like what does that look like, or what are the components in it?"
Yeah,
I think. AI can be such a great tool for education at some point as well. And it's still very early phases, and I'm not saying, I'm not saying take the kids out to school and just give them ChatGPT. Absolutely not. But it's just so much fun when you toy with it.
Do you think people or children should be taught how to deal with AI in school?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a tool, it's an innovation just like any other. Like back in the days, there was this discussion on whether schools should have computers for
Yeah.
kids, and to me, this feels kind of like a repeat of that. And my answer is absolutely. Does that mean it's a free for all and there are no risks and whatsoever? No, of course not. But I think it's way better to do it and to do it mindfully. And maybe sometimes when you realize, oh, this is not the best way to teach kids about it, then change a little bit than to not do it at all. So yeah, definitely.
So looking 10 years ahead, how do you
Hmm.
hope that AI will change how we build businesses, education, society?
Yeah, I I very much hope that it will be the great equalizer of things.
Hmm.
Um,
In what way equalizer?
when you, for example, look at building companies and startups,
Hmm.
at that point, like AI can do so much for you. So if you have this entrepreneurial mindset and a good idea, the cost of like setting that up and actually trying it, I think should be so much lower than it is now, because you don't need this entire army of developers to get something off the ground, or
Hmm.
maybe other things like navigating the law, or you name it, things that are limitations right now, and actually making a product. Um, so in that sense, I think it can be a great equalizer, as like the cost of starting up can become a whole lot smaller.
Yeah.
Um, and also when it comes to education, education is expensive. I think in the Netherlands we're doing like, I think on a societal point of view, especially compared to the rest of the world, we're doing really well.
Hmm.
But in other parts of the world, you see vastly different like levels of education and quality of education, like also within countries. And it all has to do with access, and mostly of like the status or the money the parents have for their kids. But if so much of that becomes accessible and available online, then once again, I like to see that cost shrink there, and you're kind of like leveling some sort of playing field, or at least level it way more than it is now.
Hmm.
And I truly believe AI has the potential to do that. Also, for example, when it comes to businesses in the Netherlands,
Hmm.
doesn't mean it will automatically happen, to say that, because also when it comes to startups, you need a whole lot more than AI to have a positive startup climate.
Yeah.
Right, when it comes to like rules on, like, I don't know, paying people in stocks and getting people on board and all, like there's so much more to do. So as a society, like us, the companies, the non-profits, but also definitely the government there, like we still need to do a whole lot to get the most out of it, to harvest all that potential. But I do believe it's there, and that's also where I very much hope it goes, and also what we as Kickstarts are, yeah, working on, that it goes there.
Yeah. Do you also see it as a sort of equalizer in terms of opportunities of women?
Yes, for sure. I think like for everybody, like whatever spectrum you wanna get, whether it's sex, whether it's like access to money or connections, or whatever. So I think yes.
So I'm building an AI tool at the moment, one
Mhm.
that connects female founders to investors to
Mhm.
bridge the funding gap. It does use AI and it does it also um, to connect people to each other that otherwise may or may not have met each other.
Mhm.
So, from your perspective, what is the most important ingredient to make sure that AI actually supports better decisions instead of reinforcing biases?
Um Well, I think that once again kind of relates back to how you start up a project and why you do it. Um, right, I can give a really like technical answer to this, because within the space of like AI and machine learning, you have techniques and ways of measuring
Mhm.
bias and all that stuff. And if people, if you want, we can talk a bit about those things. But I think what is way more interesting, maybe in the context of the things we've discussed prior, and also kind of linking back to previous questions, if you just say, hey, I have this good cause of, bringing these people together and creating a benefit there, and bridging this funding gap. And then if you just say, hey, I want to use AI because it sounds nice for the check in the box, yeah, then you have very little incentive, or you're probably overlooking where bias, whatever may get introduced, or like unwanted bias, because sometimes you also do want bias, but that's a whole different story maybe.
Uh-huh.
Because maybe in a way you want to have bias the other way around, because you're moving towards this target. So once again, saying like, hey, I have this goal, I have this purpose, I have this vision, and to get there, I have these processes, and this is where I can still optimize for these processes. Well, I think if you followed that way of thinking, and that flow, and uh, also what you mentioned previously is like staying connected to yourself, uh, then you have all the right incentives and the reasons to do it properly, and not have those unwanted biases that you're trying to mitigate.
Yeah.
So I think once again, it starts really from not being this tech push or this checkbox that you want to check off, but really why you're doing what you're doing in a product context in the first place.
Yeah. And seeing AI as a tool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh,
just taking you up on the biases part. What
mhm.
are ways to measure biases
Well,
in AI?
I think there are plenty. I must admit, I do not know all the names by heart anymore. Uh, back way back when I was still in uni and doing my thesis, my master thesis, I did a whole lot in explainable AI, and then I also reached out into to I think what they back then, maybe still the same name, but I called fair AI in the scientific world.
Uh-huh.
And you have ways of um, measuring that, in a sense that, for example, the classic loan example, right? You go to a bank, you want to apply for a loan or mortgage, and you either get accepted or rejected. And then
Uh-huh.
of course you can test your own AI, and saying like, hey, for example, the axis on sex, does that differ if you have everywhere else just same profile but still different acceptance rate? Well, there is a bias there, and
Uh-huh.
this, I think we can all agree, is an unwanted bias. Same goes with like, I don't know, applications or whatever. And then there are a variety of techniques to kind of mitigate that, especially in like the classical AI models. I think if you have a quick search on like Fair AI, there's this really good library. I think also I believe done from research at TU Eindhoven. They have a whole website on this that approaches it from a technical perspective, and so there are definitely ways you can go about it. But in the end, it's still as a human how you then interpret it, and how you choose to go about it. And then also when it comes to wanted and unwanted biases, like an AI is not going to give you that answer. You yourself have to say, hey, this is the bias I want or do not want
Uh-huh.
in my particular case. So it's not the AI kind of making that trade off. It's the human that implements it in the end.
Sounds like a great place to move to my final two questions.
Hmm.
So let's take it beyond AI. What would a more inclusive world look like to you and to other women who want to lead in the AI space or in the tech space? What advice would you give them?
I think what a more inclusive world would look like is in a way a world where this question isn't relevant anymore, or you just do it. That I think that'd be a great indicator. How that then exactly looks like, um, I'm not like the biggest fan of all those quota necessarily, or needing everything to be like 50-50 or
Uh,
whatever. But once again, I'd like to approach it, but then from a societal point of view, like, hey, what is it that we want to achieve, like as a society,
mhm.
and what is the most efficient way to get there. And of course, there's not like a single answer to that. People have tons of different opinions and things on where we as a country or as a continent need to go. But I think when I think there's this clear sign now that we can benefit from more women in the space,
Hmm.
and to everybody I like, but also men, because of course there's so many more like axes on where you can have this diversity.
Yeah.
Conclusion is my advice would be to just do it, to just go there, right? I'm doing it too, and of course I like to think that it's all exceptional and yada yada yada, but in the end it's not. um
It shouldn't
and
be.
yeah, it shouldn't be. And don't get me wrong, like I've walked into meetings where I saw, like, some people looking at me like, oh, who's this little girl coming in? But in all honesty, I've also walked into meetings and I thought, who is this ugly dude here, right? I mean, I'm not saying I'm a perfect human being, right? I have that too. Like, the world is unfair. We should move to a fair world, and I every day try to work towards that, like put in my effort. But in the end, to me, it feels like, do you then let yourself be limited by it? Because you do have agency and you do have wiggle room. Is it sometimes harder? Is it sometimes unfair? Yes. But is that a reason to not do it? Absolutely not. And I would love to be. And I think, oh, the other people you have on the podcast, please let them be those beautiful examples that is possible, and that you can just do it. Just that's the only way forward. Just do it.
Thank you very much. Really nice quote to end the episode on. Sophia Zitman, if people want to learn more about you, connect with you, or learn more about Kickstart AI and your work there, where would you like to send them?
Well, you can always send me a direct message on LinkedIn, just Sophia Claire Zitman, or go to the Kickstart.ai website, and you can find us there as well. And if you ever want to meet in person, we host plenty of meetups, so join one.
Cool. And we'll include those links in the show notes. Sophia Zitman, thanks very much for an amazing conversation. Listeners, thank you very much for listening. And until the next episode, keep being awesome. Well, that's it. Thank you for listening to episode 136 of Women Disrupting Tech, titled Why Your AI Implementation Fails and How to Fix It, with Sophia Zitman. If you want to connect with Sophia or learn more about her work, please use the links in the show notes. And as usual, you can find the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog via the link in the caption. If you found this episode useful, please take a moment to rate and review the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss a future episode. Once again, thank you for listening. I hope to see you in the next episode. And until then, as always, keep being awesome.